The dollar is in the worst bear market it has ever been, and it has the worst start in the last 50 years that we've ever seen. It's absolutely incredible, but everybody is blaming tariffs as the reason why the dollar is doing poorly. I'm here to uncover the reasons why the dollar is doing poorly. Sure, partially because of the tariffs and the trade wars that we're seeing, but a big in part to a lot of the things that people are not talking about. But first, let's review about what I initially started this with and what is on the thumbnail here, where we're seeing the purchasing power in the dollar in the longest bear market in history, where the dollar's purchasing power over the last 100 years has lost 95% of its actual purchasing power. We've seen it take off 40% of its purchasing power since the year 2000. So the USD sees its worst start in 50 years. It's tariffs, but for investors, it's not all that bad of news. Now, this is a big reason why I think everybody is not paying attention to this, because we're seemingly in an asset bubble. We have the dollar essentially doing terribly for quite some time. And then on top of that, we have assets skyrocketing in flight and absolutely taking off. And so investors are not upset with the way things are going. And so everybody's in turn just turning a blind eye to the dollar having a terrible start to the year. But if we go into the tariffs, right, the USD has dropped 10% in 6 months alone, according to the dollar index. It means the dollar has reached its lowest value since Nixon years, when the price of gold was unlinked from USD in 1973. I mean, we all know WTF happened in 1971. But the decline is being felt by most Americans traveling abroad, since the dollar has dropped 13% against the euro, 6% against the Japanese yen. Oh man, the international travelers, such as myself, are finding that it's a little bit more difficult. But this logging the worst year and the worst start since 1973, well, there's something else that we need to look at, right? The Dixie dropping by 10.8% and it dropping against other fiat currencies means everybody else is starting to catch up. It means the United States is starting to lose its advantage of having that global reserve currency. So we really need to be keeping a very close eye on what we're seeing here, because as the Dixie starts to fall and fall and fall, well, this crash can get even worse. And we all know WTF happened in 1971, right? Where we've seen this website. Everything happened after then. GDP, real wages, everything just absolutely taking off, and all the good things that you want to see increasing just don't increase as much after 1971. And so the dollar, having being impacted by the trade war, the rising inflation and economic concerns, is a major portion of that. And a lot of people see the Dixie and see the dollar, honestly, not looking that great throughout this entire year. And they've been flocking to different assets, right? They've been getting out of the dollar and getting more into something like, the stock market, the S&P 500, gold, Bitcoin, you name it. They're buying it. Everything outside of the dollar, they are flocking away from it. So as investors continue to ditch dollars, right, everybody is seemingly starting to get away from it, but the inflation concerns are still there. And so we've had this publicly, spat between Trump and Jerome Powell, and it's been a very interesting aspect of it, because this little wrinkle here of the political theater that we see, Trump is now going to put tariffs on furniture and do all these other things, and maybe it's losing sight of the actual thing. But if we look at the public confidence in the Fed chair, it's near record lows. 37% of the US adults say they have a great deal or a fair amount of confidence in the Fed chair that it will do the right thing. Now, for Powell, in his second term as chair, this is his second worst reading. So by comparison, it peaked at 58% in 2020. Well, people were getting a lot of, compensation during that time in 2020, right? When you're getting stimulus checks, the guy that's giving you the stimmy checks usually will get a high approval rating, right? Even though it's not necessarily the right thing to do for the economy, those stimmy checks, well, it got everybody on Jerome Powell's side, allegedly, right? So I think that as we see this, continue to spike up, we got to watch how the US dollar is going to continue to do, and will this government, or will the confidence in Jerome Powell to do the right thing start to come back up? I mean, it's facing this crisis of confidence, right? This century, the only other time of confidence was this low was during Janet Yellen's term in 2014. And it's all because, Trump bickering back and forth with Powell over these renovation costs, doing these other kinds of things, right? It doesn't help with the confidence of the overall economy. Look, I'm with Trump, and he's, trying to get them to lower interest rates. So I get what he's doing and why he's doing it. But seeing these things, like this on national television with the hard hats on, where he's literally, pulling out this piece of paper saying that they're way over budget, it doesn't help with the public confidence in the Fed. And maybe this is all of Donald Trump's goal, is he doesn't want anybody to be confident in the Fed going forward. If he does, bravo to you, sir. I could see that continuing to happen here. But there's going to be some interesting little aspects, little wrinkles that we see moving forward with all of this, right? When Trump is out there bickering with Jerome Powell, we see him spend months attacking the head of the U.S. central bank on social media, calling him a numbskull, too slow Powell. Well, everybody's going to lose confidence in that. And threatening a major lawsuit against Jerome Powell, well, I don't necessarily think that that is super productive in what we want going forward here, right? Donald Trump threatened to allow major lawsuits against Federal Reserve Jerome Powell to go forward. The president said on Truth Social that he would relate to Powell's management of a major renovations as the Fed headquarters. And Jerome, too late, Powell must lower rates. Now, we're seeing this in 24 days, give or take. And we see it at 83% chance the Fed is going to now lower rates. And I think that's good, right? I don't necessarily think that lowering rates is going to solve all the problems. But I think the way that the government and the Fed are kind of going at odds, we're losing a lot of confidence in the Fed. We're losing confidence in the right moves because inflation. Once you start to lose confidence in the overall economy, what the people in power are going to do, that's when you start to think that we're going to be in a recession, right? It's once everybody starts losing confidence in the recession, or losing confidence in the overall economy, well, that's when we start to see the inflation concerns start to spike up. And when the inflation concerns start to spike up, that's when we see everybody running from the hills. Now, I'm going to keep going through all of this, but make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. I'm only 3 away from 300, so help me reach that here tonight, folks. Now I'm 2 away from 300. So keep hitting that subscribe button, folks, because we are seeing the worst start to the dollar here that we've seen in 50 years, right? I opened up with this, but we see the Dixie actually getting up a little bit here. The inflationary concerns that we're seeing, right? At 97, we're still not where the Dixie wants to be. The Dixie wants to be, where everything is humming along, where we're starting to see, the confidence raise up. Everybody's blaming Jerome Powell as the for the weak economy. And look, maybe, if we get this interest or inflation under wraps, cutting interest rates would be a no-brainer. But I think that it's all, it's all a distraction from our own personal economy. I agree. He could file suit, but doesn't mean he'll get any judgment. I agree with that. I think it's just political theater at the end of the day. I think Donald Trump knows what he's doing, right? It's the art of the deal, right? We saw Donnie T the other day go to what? He went to Russia and he flew fighter jets over him, right? And was just like, "Oh, hey, there's some fighter jets. Look out." Right? So, I mean, it's just all of this different blame that is going back, and the reality is that we're just hurting because we printed so much money back a couple years ago. And so, as we start to see the S&P 500, I'm sure it'll open up and be strong tomorrow. It's up 1.52%. I believe that's on Friday of last week. Before the close, it was up 1.5%. I'm sure we'll have a hot week. And, we're starting to see that global shift towards alternative assets that I was describing here to you guys a little bit earlier, right? I mean, investors are diversifying and getting away from the dollar. And we see some structural changes in currency hedging. International investors from Europe and Asia are using currency hedges to protect their U.S. investments, right? So there's been a shift and structural change in global investments. And then, of course, the political pressures on the Fed definitely are not helping with this whole situation. So, we're going to start to see that. And we're going to start to see this really increase over time. So we're going to be watching the Dixie here very closely on this channel. So make sure you guys are hitting that sub button and like. But I mean, this is political theater that we're going on. We've got a big week ahead of us, folks. We've got a huge week where we've got a bunch of we got Nvidia earnings later this week. We've got housing here, on Monday. Here we go. We got July new home sales data, August consumer confidence, Nvidia report earnings. I'm going to be covering all of this week in real time, my reactions. So make sure you guys are hitting that sub button, and I'll catch you guys all at the next one.